5 topics. Specifically, we need to have a good economy. This is a series of one of 5 videos that I'll be creating where I cover what I call the big 5, or, I guess you could say my big 5 campaign promises when running for Congress. The things that I'd like to focus on and get done when I become your elected representative for District 11 in Florida for the United States House of Representatives. District 11 is just west of Orlando. Anyway, so let's get started. Basically talk about what it means to have a good economy. And just to recap, what are the big 5? 1, have a good economy. 2, have access to good healthcare if you want. 3, be protected domestically and internationally. 4, take care of our families. And 5, end government overreach, which also ties in a bit to number 1 we're going to talk about today. So what basically, let's start with that. Let's start with talking about a good economy, what that means practically. So what is a good economy? A good economy is where you essentially get to live in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I love saying that sentence because it's in the Declaration of Independence. It's essentially what we decided that we as a country, as a people, as a nation would focus on. It's our, as I guess you could say, it's our weight of measure per se. It's our counterbalance that we can weigh everything we do against to make sure that we are following and doing what we should as a nation. Do we have life? Are we free? Are we happy? Right? A good economy basically proportions that to us, right? Because money doesn't bring happiness. We know that. Money is a tool. It's a contentment inside of us when resources become available. Does that make sense? So in other words, a good economy means that we have plenty of money to go around. We have good jobs. We have money for our schools. It's money for our families, money for all sorts of things. A good economy is a stable, growing economy in the country where everybody gets to live in what the promise is in structuring our country. Though, what's been happening lately, and why is our good economy under huge threat? I mentioned this before if you see my videos, that I believe we are heading towards what could be one of the worst recessions in the history of this nation, if not the world. And what do I mean by that? We have a huge amount of a variable amount of factors that are basically closing in. We have so many bubbles going on, housing bubbles. We have stock market bubbles. We have a job bubble. We have, that does exist, and I'll tell you why in a minute. We have debt bubbles. We have money printing, and all these factors that are pushing, food shortages, all these factors that are pushing towards a huge crisis. If you probably remember the housing crisis of 2008, roughly 2007-8. Of course you do. Now that was just housing. That was just a housing bubble. We have one of those too. I imagine like 5, 6 different factors that are critical that are all pressing at the same time. And I don't say this to scare you. I say this for you to be aware of what's coming so you can prepare. And also so you can take action so you can course correct before it's too late. Now, our government's on a spending spree. In fact, I'm going to grab something to show you. If you give me 1 second here, in my top drawer here, you can't see where I'm grabbing, but let's say that you have some cash. Okay, let's grab some cash here. I got a $20 bill and a $10 bill. Okay, let's say you got this money. Now, let's say that you decide you're going to make a copy of that money. Would you be allowed to do that? Heck no. You're not even allowed to destroy this money. If you burn this money or destroy it on purpose, you could actually be persecuted. It's actually a monetary crime. What is this paper worth? Well, this paper is worth essentially what the value we put into it is. So our government stands by that $20 is $20. Therefore, it's $20. Though the market it stands by, as authority saying, hey, this is currency. You can use this paper in exchange for goods. Now the market decides what it's worth. If you have a whole lot of something, obviously too much of something, and not enough demand, well, the thing is cheaper. It's marketing 101. So now what happened under COVID recently is that our government printed about $13 trillion. Yes, that's trillion with a T. I'm not kidding you. $13 trillion they printed. And why and what's going on here? Okay, let me explain this to you. So we're not allowed to print and copy money for our needs. Oh, let's say, I want a new boat or a new car or a new house. So I'm not going to go out in the garage and print a bunch of money. If I did that, man, the FBI would be knocking on my door. The Secret Service is actually in charge of counterfeit money. So the Secret Service would be knocking on my door and bringing me in. I would not do that. So why is it that the government can produce any amount of money they want? Why is it that they can print $13 trillion right under our noses and pretend like nothing happening? Why can they essentially counterfeit? That's essentially counterfeiting is what they're doing. Illegal counterfeiting. Does that make sense? That's out of control. There's no controls on the government against printing money. And the effect of that is horrible. Why? Any nation in the world that has printed a lot of money has gone into failure, has collapsed. I'll give you a good example of a nation out there. Germany. Germany, after World War I, say around the 20s, 30s, and so on, they were a strong, wonderful nation. They are strong today as well, but back then, before all the Second World War stuff, they were a strong nation. In fact, Albert Einstein got his education in Germany and became one of the world changers, in America and the world as well, through the educational system in Germany. It's a high-level educational system, great country. Well, at the time, we basically had in Germany what they called, I think it was called the Weimar Republic. And it's Weimar Republic or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Weimar Republic, I think it was called. And it was basically a government that just started printing a bunch of money. They printed money and they printed money and they printed more money and more money to suit their needs. Why? Because they wanted to spend. Just like our government's doing. They're printing all this money. Why? Because the people in control and power want to go on spending sprees constantly. $500 million to forgive some student loans. $6 billion $500 billion in forgiving student loans. Sorry. $6 trillion infrastructure project, and so on and so forth, right? And all this money is just getting thrown at all these different agendas. Why? Because it's easy and it's simple. And it's something that they have access to get their plans taken care of. The problem with that is what? When you have a government printing a lot of money, spending a lot of money that they're just printing, which isn't there in the economy, which isn't produced because of value, because of what we've done, it causes a government to eventually go into collapse. The Roman Empire went into collapse because of inflation, right? The nation of Germany went into collapse as well, partially because of economical situation, the Great Depression, and also because they were printing so much money. They went into collapse. There was hyperinflation, people bringing wheelbarrows of money in to buy food. The money was worthless. There's pictures. I've seen pictures of kids making paper airplanes and kites out of money in Germany during that time because it was worthless. It was like toilet paper. So what happened? During that time of printing money, the economy became so weak. There's such a huge crisis in Germany that it gave birth to what? To Hitler. Hitler came into power because of their stupid monetary policies in Germany. And you know what happened? He became this warmongering man promising all these amazing things. Basically, essentially said, hey, our problem is with the Jewish people. They're the people sitting on all the money. They're making all the economical problems here. And he used them as the enemy, common enemy. And basically, that's when all the persecution started. It was horrible. And that's when the war began, and Hitler started building up the army and building up this war machine and waging war on everyone. So it led to a tyrannical leader because people were so desperate to get out of that situation that they let a tyrannical leader who promised the world come into power. Now, another thing too is that I want to tell you is that so the last 200 years we had a lot of advances in society. If you look 200 years back, so last 100 years, a lot has happened. 100 years before that, we had the invention of industrial revolution in the sense of we had some steam locomotives, we had some basic stuff, right? Steam powered boats and some decent industrial stuff. Now, after that, what happened? From about 1920s to about the 2020s or so, which we're in now, we've had these giant quantum leaps in advances in technology in society, right? And we've become a very complex, a very intelligent, a very smart generation where we have a lot of knowledge. We're really advanced. What does that mean? That despite of whatever is going to happen in our country, how bad or good, if we go into huge economical collapse or crisis, we're going to find a way out of it because we're the American people, because we're smart, we're innovative. That's our DNA. That's how we're built up. So what I'm trying to tell you is basically that our government needs to be more responsible with its money spending. Right now, we're at this crossroads where I'm not sure what's going to happen. I don't want to put fear into you, but I don't know what's going to happen because the government in charge right now, the people in charge right now, are being extremely stupid with our money, and that is reflected into into inflation. You feel the inflation piling up. I know you do. I know that your expenses are getting greater and greater. Do you realize that an average family right now needs about $500 more a month just to buy groceries per month? $500 more a month you got to find somewhere to put into groceries, and your money's reaching less and less. As far as housing goes, cars go, gas goes. Gas prices have fallen a bit, but they rose a lot compared to a year ago. Still, they're still a lot higher than a year ago, right? And so when the government goes on these spending sprees and prints all this money, they are going at your pockets because they throw so much money out there that it deflates the value of the currency. The debt ceiling is astronomically high. Now, before COVID, our debt to earning ratio was insane. Debt to GDP was insane. It was really bad. In fact, a lot of Western countries were highly indebted. Now, COVID hit and it bankrupted the countries even more. Why? Because people in charge in most places, except for a few states in the United States, for example, they shut everything down, shut all production down. Made you go home and stop your jobs. And they're like, uh-oh, we've hurt our economy, we've killed our economy. So they print all this money to prop it up for a while, but then it comes around. Let me give you an example of what's happening right now in Europe. Okay, and I have a lot to do with Europe because my wife is Danish, and so I know a lot about Europe and what's going on there. In the know, I guess you could say. Right now in Europe, there's an energy crisis at the time of recording this video. It'll probably continue for a while. Energy prices, electricity, have more than quadrupled, quintupled. It's 4 or 5 times up. Natural gas prices in a lot of homes are heated with natural gas in Europe. They've gone up 8 times in the last year. 800%. And they blame the war in Ukraine on this. They blame it's the war in Ukraine, this and that and the other thing, which part of it is because 20% of the gas in Europe comes from Ukraine. But the value hasn't increased in 25%. It's increased like 8-fold. And because of market fear, market manipulation. So what have they done? I'll give you an example. In Denmark, the nation of Denmark, where the energy has increased 5 times or so. You have situations where, for example, supermarkets are turning off their lights completely, turning up the heat in the fridges. Why? Because their power bill has gone from let's say $4,000 a month to $20,000 a month. And what does the government do? Well, the government gets insane amounts of taxes. Their their treasury boxes are empty because of COVID, because they bankrupted themselves under COVID, closing everything down. They're really strict in Europe. And now they got to find money. So let's say, the supermarket spends $15,000 or $20,000 in a month on electricity. It's insane. Well, they can't pay bills. They can't pay themselves. They got to fire people. They got to turn lights off and pretty much close down. Some of them are going bankrupt and just closing up shop. On the $20,000, about half of that goes to government and taxes. So the government is making bank. And this is all over Europe, not just Denmark, all over Europe. The governments are making bank right now on the energy crisis. I mean, insane amounts of money. And the stupidest thing of all, by them putting sanctions on Russia, because we're going to be energy independent and not be dependent on Russia, they shot themselves in the foot. Why? Because Russia's making more money than ever because the prices are through the roof. Okay? So what does the governments do? What do the governments do to alleviate this problem? Instead of cutting taxes, lowering the prices on the taxes and stuff on gas and oil, whatever it may be, they print more money. They give out loans to private people and corporations so they can pay back the government over the course of 5 years. So they basically stick it to them and give them a huge loan over the course of 5 years to pay the energy prices back. What kind of craziness is this? So the governments are being insanely greedy. Why? Because they have been insanely stupid with their money. Now, so we have a culmination of things. That inflation, stupid monetary policies. We're just printing money without control. The government needs to have stops and controls on this money printing. It's stupid and it needs to stop. Secondly, innovation, right? It needs to stimulate innovation. Instead of taking control of things and trying to get more and more control over us, the USA, the government needs to stimulate our small businesses. Our government needs to stimulate private people. It needs to stimulate our economy. Innovation is our driving force in America. We're amazing innovators. We are copied all over the world because of our innovation. So that needs to be stimulated. The next thing that needs to happen, the third thing, is we need to look at and tackle the issue of coming job shortages. What's going on? Our jobs are threatened because when a crisis hits, just like it did in 2007 and 8, before 2007 and 8, jobs are pretty much hanging on trees. You know what I mean? You get jobs easy. There's a lot of stuff. You know, you're young. You want to get your first job. It's easy too. I got my first job when I was like 15, working at McDonald's with a bunch of young people. You go to McDonald's today and it's a lot of, 20, 30 somethings a lot of times. The entry level jobs are being taken by a little older generation because the job is drying up. Why are the jobs drying up? Well, during the first housing crisis or the last housing crisis, essentially, the companies learned to be more automated. Automation started coming in. Where you're having robots, one robot, and one person controlling that robot is doing the job of 10 plus people. Yeah, that's 10 plus people that lose their jobs in that sector. Look at Detroit, Michigan. We used to be Motor City, full of car manufacturers and so on. It's all closed down. Now it's these super factories that are automated to the umpteenth degree, right? This is only going to get worse, especially when crisis hits. When crisis hits companies, that's coming soon, what's going to happen is the companies are going to automate even more, okay? There's going to be even more automation going on. And what's the consequence of that? More jobs that are gone. Less jobs. The jobs will be gone, and they'll be gone forever unless the government steps in and does something about it. What can the government do? Well, that's the interesting thing, because some people are like anti-government, messing with the job market and this and that. But if the government doesn't step in, automation will take over, and the people, a great majority of Americans, will not have any jobs. We'll have nothing to do. And then how are we going to get money? How are we going to pay our bills? How are we going to take care of our families if we have no job? The jobs are drying up. More and more as more and more automation comes. You know, I've seen things where, like, in the old days, I had a grandma who worked as a phone operator for Bell, like a specific Bell. And she worked the lines, and connecting calls. That's, that kind of thing. Well, that's a thing of the past because it's all automated with computers. But even, like calling around is a thing of the past. Like calling a company to ask them this, that, or the other thing. You can still do that. But most of the time you get, answering machines and automated messaging systems and automated computers, like where you go to a website, you want to ask customer service something, and then you're talking to a robot that's helping you out, and the jobs are just drying up more and more. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do to get more jobs? And how do we get more jobs? Well, the government has to do something about AI. It does. AI can get out of control. And when AI gets out of control, you're going to have a ruling elite and nobody else who has jobs or anything else. So that has to be stepped in. You have to step in and be creative as a government and understand those situations. The problem is they don't as much, right? You have these career politicians who are there for 60, 50, 40 years, who are so out of touch with our society, who don't have children. I got 4 children, who haven't had companies. I've had 3 companies this last year, right? They don't understand what's going on. And since they don't understand what's going on, they make these decisions that just trip us up and they hurt us. So to have a thriving economy, we have to look to the innovators. We have to look to the people, and we the people have to carry the torch. We need to have the freedom to innovate. And the government's job is to make sure there's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And if we see that any of those 3 elements are being basically threatened, it's the government's job to step in and take away that threat. That's when government intervention comes in. And a government has to be there. A government has to be there because they provide protection. If you don't have a government, you don't have a country, right? The government provides protection on our boundaries, country boundaries, against threats from abroad. Otherwise, countries like China would just rush in and take us over. In fact, Russia and China are working in cahoots now to challenge the West. In China, how much stuff do you have around your house that's made in China, right? How much stuff do we have around that's made in China? Do you realize we're just pouring money into China like crazy? I mean, it's crazy how much money's getting poured into China. Why don't we bring those jobs over here? Why don't we bring that manufacturing over here? We have the technology for it now. Sure, Chinese labor is a little bit lower in cases. Sure, they have a lot of the technology that we don't quite have in some of these aspects of manufacturing, but that could be implemented. I mean, if the government starts thinking about this, about stimulating innovation and growth in the country, man, we're going to grow by leaps and bounds. But we need to focus on stimulating our country and our people. You see what I mean? There's a lot more to it, a lot more to increasing and growing the economy. Another one of them too is less government persecution on our personal taxes. Why should we have to pay so much money in federal taxes? Why does the federal government why is it so hungry for money, right? It shouldn't have that much involvement in our personal finances. We should be more free, unless, of course, still not, there's no unless. We should pay less taxes to the government, federal government. We should. And what we do pay in tax for the federal government needs to be used so well and thought out so well that it only benefits us. And it follows those three principles I talked about: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's three. So anyways, I hope that this video helped you understand a little more about my views on growing the economy, what can be done to bring growth. Like I said, we're at a crossroads right now where we need to do something fast. We need to take action. These midterms that are coming up, you need to get out and vote for people that represent you. That's the beauty of America, is that we're allowed to vote for people who represent us. It's not a party-based system, even though we mostly only have two parties. I'm an independent. Why am I an independent? Because then I don't get sucked into either side of the parties and the party control. That's important for me to not have to play by party politics and the power suck in there. That's in there. It's important to me to be free to do as I please, not as I please, but as I feel my constituents please and voters please that I represent. So please consider voting for Kevin Porter for Congress these midterms, okay? Vote for me. I will carry this torch forward. I will bring this fight to the doorstep of the federal government. I am ready. I'm sharp, and I can do this, okay? Just believe in me. I believe in you. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate your attention and your time. And don't forget to share. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to like everything I'm doing. Follow me, get involved. Let's move forward. Thank you so much. God bless.